Rather than having one long quiet time in the morning, the idea is to have several short breaks throughout the day where you stop and intentionally spend time with God. So I haven't figured out what to call this time yet. When I read about it, they call it the daily office. Some places they'll call this the divine office. What if I called it a timeout? I'm familiar with timeouts because I give them to my boys. What if it's my timeout? I may need to escape to the bathroom, not because I need to go to the bathroom, but so that I could have a timeout. To be honest, having quiet time in the morning never really worked for me anyway. By 10 a.m. I was totally drained of whatever sort of filling up I had experienced during the quiet time. So I liked this idea. I felt like it could be doable for me. For this first few days, I decided to use a little booklet. This is a free resource that I got online. As you start with 2 minutes of silence, and then there's a short scripture reading, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 verses, and then he has a little paragraph with just some reflections, almost like a little devotional about the scripture. And then he gives you a question to consider. And then at the end, he gives you a prayer that you can read. And then he asks you to close with 2 minutes of silence. So the first time I tried doing this yesterday, I was at home with the kids. It was a snow day. They were off school. And I sat down to start. And I realized that the 2 minutes of silence, I was not experiencing silence. It was really noisy. I could still hear them. And so I decided that one thing I may need for my daily office is these industrial, I can't even hear myself when I have these on, these industrial headphones, which I found in the garage, which I think Mark bought at Home Depot. What struck me about these first few times that I've done it is just how centering that first 2 minutes of silence has been for me. Just to, I mean, I realize as I've done it that I don't take time in the day, not just to be with God, but just to be silent for 2 minutes. So I'm finding that even if I would just stop and do that, I guess I'm surprised. I'm surprised at how much I can get out of just a few minutes of reading a few verses and responding to a question. God's able to really just, highlight some things. So for example, in the first day's morning time, early in the morning, Jesus gets up and leaves the house and goes away to pray, and then the disciples wake up and they're trying to figure out where he is, and they realize that he's been off praying. But I've read that before, but what had never really jumped out at me before is that when they find Jesus and he greets them, he says, let's go somewhere. Let's go to these nearby villages so that I can preach there. That is why I have come. And, it just never occurred to me before, but after Jesus gets up from this time of prayer, he has a real sense of clarity. Again, what is my purpose on this earth? And specifically, where am I supposed to go next to preach? So I realized he was clear after he'd spent the time in prayer. If I could have more focused time of prayer, how helpful could that be in just really sort of shoring up what it is that I'm supposed to be doing maybe that day or that part of the day or overall. I just did the reading, and I decided I really like the booklet. Quite honestly, I don't really like devotionals that much. I've always felt like they're too prescriptive. It's like, here, read this, now say this, now think this. I don't know, it felt really constraining to me, so I've kind of always avoided doing any kind of devotional book. But I'm really getting a lot out of this, and I'm thinking if I didn't have a guidebook, it might be hard for me to really make the time meaningful. I'm not sure what I would be reading. Would I just be opening up my Bible randomly, or would I be working through a few verses at a time? There's something that's really helpful about having a verse and a little commentary and a question that was pre-selected someone else already put, lots of hours of thought into creating this. So details about the passage jump out at me that I probably read right through. But for example, this morning's passage was from Mark chapter 4. The disciples are in the boat and the storm comes and they're very afraid, and then Jesus calms the storm. The disciples are on one end of the spectrum having just all this fear and anxiety about the storm, and then at the other end of the spectrum is the other extreme of Jesus, who has a confidence and a peace. In fact, he's sleeping through the storm. He has so much confidence, and he's without worry. The question was really good too. It says, what are you holding anxiety about today? What would it look like for you to embrace the peace that Christ offers you today? To know that Jesus has a calm and a confidence over those very same issues. So for me to acknowledge that and to want to connect myself to him so that I can experience that peace instead of the unrest, that was huge. And it all happened in like 5 to 7 minutes. So it's nighttime and the kids are finally asleep. And so I'm just thinking through, I need to come up with something intentional that I could do for any, like I'll call them bonus sessions that I'm able to squeeze in. And one thing I have noticed is that the lessons are great, but I'm not really spending time praying through, just prayer requests that I know for, friends or family, people that are on my heart. So maybe these bonus sessions are a good time for me to have a couple of moments of silence and then to just spend some time in prayer, just like good old-fashioned prayer time. It snowed a bunch here in Denver, and so we've been cooped up inside the house most of the weekend. And I've been trying to build this wardrobe from a.k.a. to that point where I'm like, I stopped counting how many hours this took. And then the kids would interrupt me, and then they would want to help me, which actually makes it take longer. And like you can't see, I should turn the camera around. Everything has been pulled out of the dressers I used to have, so that I could get it in the new thing. This is my bedroom where I've been building the wardrobe. I've pulled everything else out. More wardrobe mess, old dressers. Actually, that chevron in the back, I'm going to put in the back of one of the wardrobe pieces, which will stay open. Mark doesn't know about that yet. We'll see if he likes it. We'll keep it either way. Okay, this is so scary, but I will do it. I will show you the kitchen. This is the kitchen. I don't know if you can see. It is a disaster. How do you guys feel about being home for 2 days in a snowstorm? What's that been like for you?
Oh, it's been fun.
It's been fun?
Oh, like you can take.
Seems like we're going to have to clean up a lot down here too.
And yeah.
I feel like a mess on the inside. I also feel like I look like a mess. Like this is what I look like when I don't blow dry my hair and I don't put on any makeup. And so I'm to that point where normally I would be like, I just need to get cleaned up. So I'm going to stop and pause and take 5 or 10 minutes and do the lesson. I feel much better. In the past, before I tried this sort of experiment, I wouldn't have stopped just then and thought, I need 10 minutes just to get centered and have a little time with the Lord. I wouldn't have done that. I would have probably freaked out or done something else to cope or escape. As I started the 2 minutes of silence, I found myself sort of fixating on all the mess and the disarray around me and feeling distracted by that. And I just found myself just saying, Lord, would you just come into this mess? Would you just meet me in this place of disarray? So what's interesting, the lesson that I just did came from the story where the disciples are out on the boat at night and they're having troubles rowing because the waters are rough, and then Jesus walks on the water and comes out to meet them. The very last line of that story says they were completely amazed. The disciples were completely amazed, for they had not understood about the loaves. Earlier that day is when Jesus had fed the 5,000, and apparently they didn't understand how it had happened. Great line in the commentary, in the little devotional paragraph of the lesson, where he says, Jesus invites us to a massive turning from what we can take in with our 5 senses to a whole new way of thinking. And I thought that's perfect, because what's happening to me today, tonight, and what happens to me a lot is if I feel like everything around me is in disorder, it's like this huge burden is on my back, and I can't be present with the kids, and I can't just enjoy the moment because I'm thinking about all the things that I need to be getting done. And so what a great invitation for me tonight, for just these next few hours until bedtime, until I get them to sleep, as everything is still kind of crazy town around here, is just set my mind in the Spirit and just try to be okay with it and invite God into the mess and ask Him to just help me be calm and help me be present and help me get over it, because it will get done at some point. And maybe not, right? That's part of the challenge of this season of life that I'm in. Sometimes these projects don't really get done, and my house really kind of is always messy. But to be able to let go of that and still enjoy what's around me and focus on the things that are really, really important, I really want to get good at that. It is still snowing. It's been snowing all week, and I was so scared the kids would not have school today, and this is like my last morning alone before this long weekend, and I'm going to head over to the gym because I know that I need to do some things to fill up my tank. I will tell you that I don't really like to work out. I wish I was someone who could just like hardly wait to go exercise, and that's not the case. But I have found the power of endorphins. I feel so good after I exercise. I just feel like I could do anything, like I could just like be the CEO of something. I'm gonna try doing a daily office while I exercise. This is like killing 2 birds with 1 stone, and I will check in later and let you know how the office on the treadmill goes. So here I am on the treadmill. I can't believe I had the nerve to bring the camera here, but hey, Jesus was a risky kind of guy, so I could do something this risky, right? And I think people think I might be making an exercise video or something, and little do they know I'm actually doing quiet time right here on the treadmill. This is great, double dipping. There's just a couple things that I'm doing differently. I opted not to close my eyes during the silence, the beginning and end, because I thought that would cause me to fall off the back, which could really put a dent in things, literally and figuratively. Okay, you can do drugs or you can do endorphins. They're great, and for me, I think I get a lot of ideas when I exercise, probably because my brain is like in full gear. Otherwise, I'm like half brain dead all the time doing what I do all day with the kids. So I gotta tell you that having quiet time on the treadmill, it was wonderful. And I gotta tell you too, the lesson, so interesting. The lesson came from the book of Jeremiah, and it's the part where God is calling Jeremiah, and Jeremiah says, but I can't, I'm just a child. And the lesson was about stepping over our fears, which is timely because I was sitting here thinking, you know, this video diary thing's kind of weird, and oftentimes I feel intimidated when I teach the Bible lessons, because I know that I'm pretty young. I'm only 37. Like, what do I know? And a lot of people that come to Bible study are 10 or 20 or 30 years older than me. They have so much more life experience. So what a cool reminder for me to step over my fears or intimidations around that and just take a risk. I just wanted to share a few things that I've learned over these past couple of weeks of trying this out. The first is that I would never want to be a video editor. I have learned how to string clips together and cut some things out, and it is tedious work. The other thing I've learned is that I use a lot of filler words. Can you tell I'm trying not to use them right now? I use a lot of so's. If you want to figure out what annoys you about yourself, just start watching video footage and you will quickly discover the things that you want to change about yourself. So that's a good point of personal development for me. As far as the daily office practice itself, one of the things that I discovered is that normally, before I started trying this, my times of activity were separate from my times of contemplation with God. So if I had time with God, whether it be during reading the Bible, praying, going to Bible study, being at church on Sunday, it felt like those times were very separate from my normal day-to-day activity. Is that my activity and my contemplation have begun to run together. And I think if I continued this practice, it would become even more so. But almost to the point where my activity has become more contemplative. So for example, one of the places where I struggle is with my kids. I get impatient. I find it mostly I feel like I'm in a rush, like I have an agenda that's not getting accomplished. And it's hard for me to really be present with them and just enjoy the moments. I want to do that, but it's hard for me to do it. I did find though, as I've been trying this practice, that somehow it has slowed me down a little bit, and I have been able to really enjoy being with them, appreciating that I get to be their mother, and just recognizing the ways that God shows up in everyday life that I have been overlooking. It has somehow brought me closer to Him. So in a way, I have stayed glued a little bit tighter to Him than I normally do. Otherwise, what happens is I find that I may have a very rich time with the Lord at some point during the week or several times in the week, but then I get really far away from Him until the next time when I have a really rich time again. It's been a big relief to me to realize that it doesn't have to be 30, 45 minutes, hours of my day, that I can accomplish that God will meet me in that place, wherever I am, in just a matter of minutes, if I'm willing to just take a second to slow down and to focus on Him. It's been fun. I'm excited to put the camera away for maybe forever. Thank you for putting up with this crazy project idea